I'm Manish Kedia, CEO, co-founder for CloudMoyo, and happy to talk a little bit about, we talked briefly about what CloudMoyo does and sort of what our positioning is. Before I do that, I just wanted to sort of introduce my panel, and then we'll open up. On the panel, we have Rich Miller. Obviously, Rich, a lot of you folks know, has been a key exec in the overall IT scene for KC and OP, overall KC IT. And then with me on the stage is also Josh. Josh is new to the KC IT scene, Josh Edwards, and we'll talk about both. And then we've got Jason Kephart, who's virtually here, given the policy changes that Terracon's implementing. So before I go further, a little bit about each of the panelists. Rich has been the CIO at Burns McDonnell, and overall a senior exec around multiple organizations, including Cerner and others in the industry. Very much a hands-on leader and very much an approachable exec. He's one of those execs who's like, let me help you, let me tell you how this is done, and always the most accessible professional and friend, if I can call him so. So welcome, Rich. Thank you.
Thank you, Manish.
And I'll go with Josh. Josh is new to the pack, as they say, right? The IT pack here in Kansas City, but he's not too far away. A couple of hours and up in Illinois. Josh is going to be leading the global data science practice over at Black Veatch. And again, shows the camaraderie between Burns and Mac, Black Veatch. And he is, again, multiple years, 20 plus years in the industry, understands really holistically data analytics, marketing, marketing approaches needed to deliver business results. So welcome to Josh.
Thank you.
And then hopefully you guys can see Jason. I can see him in front of me. Hopefully you guys can see Jason Kephart. He's the CIO at Terracon. Been there over 20 years almost. I want to say it's since 2004. So my math is bad, 17 plus years still. So close to 20, rounding. So wonderful, Jason. I'm glad. Jason, again, understands technology space deeply, and how does that help drive business outcomes for Terracon, and has really been monumental in moving them forward on their transformation journey. So again, I'm honored and happy to have all three panelists here with us. And we'll go through the dialogue around application modernization and application innovation and data modernization in belief. So with that, wanted to set context. I think we looked at cloud and AI, and I've always been a big believer that data has gravity, and as data moved to cloud, a lot of applications have moved to cloud, and once you figure out your data, the other area is, how do you put that data to good use, whether it is with predictive AI, or it is also, how do you do functions together? So it's great to get data, great to get visualization, great to now get some prognostics and predictive. Also, one of the other phenomenon we are seeing is, if I know my data tells me, hey, my invoice is late by X, and I need to issue a new notification, maybe that system's not quite ready in my core enterprise app today. Could I innovate? Could I create applications on the fly, quote unquote? And that's where we've taken a thought leadership position, saying there are all ranges of applications, and we call it innovation of applications at light speed. It's not that my marketing didn't know the spelling of light speed, but the way we were trying to connote is it's not just the speed, but these are lightweight apps that can be built that don't quite replace your enterprise apps. They're not replacing SAP, PeopleSoft, Oracle, but these are apps where you can empower both IT and business to start integrating and doing solutions and building some solutions in sort of a self-service model. Takes us to the next step of the evolution. So, and if you read trade rags, wherever you go, I think there's a lot of buzz. The buzz and the moniker that this new platform, which really fuses a lot of data and process or apps together, it's called as a low-code app development platform, a mouthful. The whole promise being you can combine bits of process, bits of data, in a very easy Excel macro, like if I describe for all of us who've been in the industry for 20, 30 years will relate to that. So you're seeing a lot of proliferation of these platforms across the board. For Microsoft, there's Power App, but there's so many other technologies. Obviously, hypergrowth. And the promise being that not only can IT do this, but also business users can start using this as self-service. The dialogue that we are going to have today over the next 30 minutes or so is really about what are the considerations. What's the promise from a low-code app? Is this the next evolution? And where do we go from here? We've categorized them into 5 core pillars. The big promise being really around rapid application development. No longer do you need to know .NET or Java or J2E. It's like writing an Excel macro, the way I think of it. Second pillar is really with this, there should be more collaboration, whether it is for the business or it is for IT and business. I need to get this invoice, I need to raise a ticket, I could write a little if this, then do this kind of a situation. To us, at the end of the day, as consulting partners, the key foundational pillar is really data modernization, because data democratization, all the data that you need business and IT to operate on needs to be available, needs to be governed. So when you say an invoice is an invoice, right? And as always, Rich and I were just having a discussion at lunch, security and compliance, making sure you're using the invoice that you're supposed to, is being used in a compliant fashion, you're not getting access to data that the individuals, not just in business, but partners. You don't want 2 suppliers to be looking at the same invoice that they were not supposed to. And how do you do this on a scalable fashion? What if this app takes off and now I started it with 5 people in my department, but now I want all 10,000 people in my team to have access to it. All those considerations, which obviously a lot of these leaders are dealing with. So I thought that would give us context to get started on this. And now hopefully we could move to the quick dialogue. Oh no, I moved too fast. We're not going to the networking break just as yet. So with that, maybe I'll open up with a common question for all 3 panelists, and then we will go to each individual. That will make this go faster. The first and foremost was around vision. Really, how is each of your organizations dealing with or thinking about the vision of low code, no code, and the promises it brings to bear, and this whole concept around faster innovation. We call it light speed, because light as in lightweight apps. Is that something you're thinking through? And I'll start with you, Rich. Put you first.
Yeah. Appreciate all of you. I think this is a very relevant topic. This is something that, as the graph showed, there's really an adoption of low code, no code options in business today. So this is a very relevant topic. For us, I'm not sure it was a vision for us. I think we were very opportunistic. So especially when Power Apps came along and some of the low code, no code solutions came along, where we said, hey, this is something we can really capitalize on to address some real challenges that we were facing as an IT organization within a large engineering construction firm here in Kansas City, Burns McDonnell. So I saw our team as being very opportunistic, and really started with us getting out to the businesses that we serve. And by the way, I use the term businesses because similar to Black Veatch, parts of our company offer a very autonomously from others. But we just got out there to introduce it to the business. And so we had the vision that we wanted to really support the adoption of these tools within these businesses, but we knew that the first thing we had to do was really introduce it to the business. And so we actually used some of the industry terminology initially, which those in the business who are already building small custom applications didn't appreciate being called citizen developers. Okay, so we rapidly changed the terminology. This was about 3 years ago. And we knew we had to rebrand it because they certainly didn't like that term. We used it internally, but they didn't like that term. So we arrived at a term that works for our company called solution makers. And again, I'll talk more about it later, but about the problems it addressed and how we went about playing our role as an IT organization in the use of low-code and no-code solutions.
Thanks, Rich. Josh, from your point of view?
Sure. What I'd share with you first is you've seen this movie before. This is a remake. This is Parent Trap or Beauty and the Beast. This is a remake of Lotus Notes, but like those movies, this is a better version of that. So what I really like about the remake of this movie is it allows me to scale time to value, right? And currently, if you think about the constraints of IT and developing, it takes months to get stuff done, organized, and pushed out. And really, the business, if they're doing it right, can do it in weeks. So that's the big value play for me.
Awesome. Thanks. Jason, we'll bring you in virtually, and hopefully you heard the question, so if you can address
the... I would agree with Rich on the being opportunistic. There are a lot of big, hairy problems that you can tackle, but being opportunistic with power apps or low-code apps, we're probably not as far along in the maturity scale as Rich is. It's still viewed as more of an IT service, but we're able to deliver and execute. Manish, you were using the litespeed. We're able to deliver apps in days, right? Instead of weeks and months, it's days. And so during this pandemic, that was very beneficial to the business. The key to that, though, is that there wasn't a lot of data needs or governance. This was get it done. Speed was the most important thing. And then as you look at more of the low-code, no-code strategy, I guess, you really need to move into some things that I'll touch on later. But, how accessible is your data? What are the business needs? Those kind of things. So right now, I think it's really critical for you to introduce it to the organization. We don't have solution makers. We have power users, a handful of them. But I think as we talked about this when we were prepping for this, a lot of your employees want to do the job that they were hired to do. They don't necessarily want to be developers. They don't want to be data modelers. They don't want to be SQL writers, those kind of things. So you have to approach your employee base or your businesses in that way too, to ask them what is it that they want to do and really have that service mentality.
Agreed. No, great point, Jason. And I agree. I think a lot of the growth has been during this pandemic era, I guess, because the demand on apps has been higher. And these are simple apps, I agree. And the second takeaway also I like is it's not just for business. I think it can solve both. It can straddle both. It's a new platform that IT should evaluate and say, hey, could we use this for doing an app as opposed to the other? While I still have you there, Jason, maybe the next key area is really around readiness, both from an enterprise application, data. How do you go about thinking through it for this kind of a platform?
Well, again, Rich touched on it, right? He reached out to his businesses, and I think that's where it starts is you need to understand the business need. You should never be doing anything unless there's a business need. You can spin up all kinds of apps and point solutions and things like that, and sometimes there's a need for that. But you got to understand what is the business value to doing this, because believe it or not, low code, no code is still a lot of effort when it comes down to it. And that ties in, I'll say, the other two aspects of it. One is just your enterprise architecture and maturity. How accessible is your data and how much is your data fit for use? Because you're never going to have a citizen developer trying to figure out how all the data relates to each other and all of that. That will bog it down and stop it. So you need to have that data maturity. It has to be accessible and it has to be ready to go. And I would say don't underestimate the time it would take for you to get that data ready. And so you need to be starting the journey, understanding what the business needs are, but then looking at the data before you start building power apps, because risk, I guess is the best way to say it, creating a lot of islands of information and functionality that is going to be a ton of technical debt that you need to address later. So having that all-up strategy for what value are you driving by creating these apps, you said it very well. It's not going to replace the Oracles, the SAPs, the PeopleSofts of the world, but it can absolutely supplement those. But you want to do so in a way that really does enhance that and doesn't create new systems of record or, you know, versions of the truth kind of things that all of us in the data world always fight with. So, you know, it's start with the business and look at your data and make sure your data is ready to go.
Thanks, Jason. I agree with that. It's definitely critical to get the data liberated and democratized before that. So, Rich, back to you here. From an adoption perspective, how have you seen the adoption go? Because you folks are further along at Burns and Mac, and what do you see with the business?
Well, it's interesting. We've been at this. I'm not sure we're further along. We've just been working at it for a while. We're pleased with the adoption today, and how do we measure that? Well, we've taken on the role of really facilitating the community outside of IT that has an interest, and so we can measure that activity through the updates through Yammer and other things that we manage, we facilitate, so we can see those, again, solution makers, not developers, those solution makers in the organization, we can see them interacting and we can see what they're producing. You know, actually earlier this year, the entire IT leadership team and most of the leadership within what we call our corporate services organization used a tool developed by a solution maker in our marketing organization to really solidify all of the corporate services that we offer to the rest of the company. So here we were in IT leaders using an application that, you know, we facilitated the development of, but we didn't develop it. It was developed by somebody in marketing. So we're making great progress. Real quick though, you know, it's very interesting. It's been fascinating for me to see this because, you know, one of the things I've fought in my career as an IT leader, and it's something that those close to IT always worry about. You know, is IT just simply chasing the new shiny technology, right? Are they spending their time on the new shiny thing? You know, are they chasing technology? Well, what's very interesting is within our solution maker community, within Burns McDonnell, it wasn't, we were probably 9 months, a year into really promoting the use of Microsoft Power Apps and Microsoft Stack for low-code, no-code development. And our solution makers expressed frustration to the IT organization that, you know, we weren't supporting the latest, hottest, newest thing they had found in low-code and no-code development, right? You know, they wanted a choice of technologies. And we've decided to actually stick to our guns, stay with that, be really good at it. You know, we don't prevent them from going out and experimenting with other technologies by any means, but if they want our support, they want us to facilitate the community, they want to get access to some data potentially they need for their applications, we think, at least within our company, Power Apps is the way to go.
Excellent. I agree. I think that's how it starts, and you've got to create that process around it for governance, which is probably what leads me to the next question with Josh. Overall, just as these apps proliferate and develop, how do you see the data app layer and data access, the governance around it, the security, if you can elaborate on that?
Yeah, for sure. I can tell you what not to do, and that's to create a data lake and let everyone have access to it. And
wait a minute. Let me write that down.
Because here's what happens is that all of those transformations, and Jason was hinting at it, that'll happen within your Power App or your low-code solution, and pretty soon You're sitting in front of the CFO, and he's got 3 dashboards in front of him, and he wants to know which one is right. And it's a very uncomfortable situation, and it causes loss of trust in the data. So I think it's very important to assess your maturity level, where you are with the data, so your data maturity. If you're thinking about data as a product within your organization, you're well along your maturity curve, and you're ready to kind of put governance around it, security around it, unleash some of that data to your citizen developer. If you're still at the data lake concept, spend a little time understanding your enterprise data assets, getting those organized, putting light governance around them, and then partner with the business on their low-code, no-code development and giving them access to those data sets.
Yep, that's very pragmatic. I agree. I think that's key to making sure they get the data that you need without creating, quote unquote, all those virtual copies, right? Three copies of your financials shown up to the CFO. That's not what we all want. Wonderful. Well, that's a very good segue to really, as we come to and I think this is a broader topic, we could spend more time, then we've got a quick 30 minutes here. But powerful new technology, obviously lots of innovative applications. If you were to give top 3 takeaways, Rich, for the audience as they go back and look at their individual IT organizations, how could they experiment? What would the steps be, milestones be? Any guidance for them?
Yeah, well, it's going to, obviously, this is an obvious statement, it's going to depend on your organization and what the culture is and what role does IT play for your organization. So for us, it gave us an answer to a demand that was coming to IT fairly regularly. And there was a little bit of conflict within our organization that I want to share with you real quick. You may not have this in your organization, but when I would ask our CEO, what keeps you up at night when it comes to IT? He would look me in the eye and say, I worry that your team does everything that the business asks you to do. Mm-hmm. Right? And I can't afford for you to do that. Yeah. I need for you to be selective. I'm expecting you to work on the things that really raise the bar for this organization, that really deliver that return on investment, right? And so again, this low-code, no-code, we were opportunistic in adopting this because we made a conscious decision that we're not going to build out a team of tens of 100 custom developers in our organization to satisfy all the custom development demands. And we tried a lot of mechanisms to try to stop that. We try to do estimates. This is what we think it's going to cost to build this custom app. Oh, and if Josh comes to me and says, I have this wonderful idea, this great idea, it's really hard to say, yeah, the CEO told me not to do anything stupid. Okay, sorry, Josh, right? I can't do that. So I think IT organizations can really leverage this development in technology to address a lot of problems like I believe that we have. I think IT can play, I mentioned earlier, we can play a very important role in terms of facilitating for the community of citizen developers. I can say citizen developer here, right? Citizen developers in your organization. That's a vital role that IT can play. And then the governance role is something that you have to address. But I would argue we haven't really addressed that fully yet. But frankly, you want to make sure that you have a reason, you have something to govern before you worry about governing it, right? And we're getting to that point. The adoption's been great. The community is growing. It's time for us to really address that.
Awesome.
Wonderful. How about you, Josh? Same question. What would be the top takeaways so far from what you've seen?
Embrace the citizen developer. It's there. Unleash it. Time to value you'll unlock. And the second is get your data models right.
Yes. I agree. I think data is the key. And Jason, I'll bring you back in on stage virtually. So from your perspective, top takeaways for the audience as they experiment and look at journey on low-code apps?
Similar to what Josh and Rich said, embrace it. It can be a great enhancement to the portfolio of services that IT, I'll say, delivers to the organization, although it's maybe more of like a stewardship than it is a true service, especially when it comes around data. I do think that data is a little bit more difficult to hand over to the business. There is, although they own and create most of that data, the governance around it, the management of it, the cleansing of it, all of those pieces require some specialized skills and disciplines with your teams. But being able to get out of the way of all those thousands of gnats that attack your IT organization every day, week, and month, and enable people to take care of those problems for themselves is a huge benefit to the organization overall. And, we used to worry about shadow IT and what's that going to do to the IT organizations and all of that. And this is a way to partner in a different way where shadow IT was never bad. It was when shadow IT happened without any visibility, knowledge, or awareness is when it became problematic down the road. This allows to, if you use Josh's, don't give them access to everything right away, govern that and manage that. But if you do that, it's a new way to partner. It lets them develop their solutions. You're giving them some guidance and framework, and it happens quickly. It's not that, IT is going to go away for 6 months and come back with something, and it's going to cost 4 times as much as what we thought it was going to, right? We're always fighting that stigma. So this really checks a lot of boxes to make your enterprise a little bit more agile to solve pain points and get business solutions out there and really enabling the business side of the equation.
Agreed. Thank you so much, Jason. So I want to pause there. I know we are coming to the end of our time, but I wanted to open up for questions from the audience. I don't know how, Dave, we've got a mic or something, but happy to get a question or two in before we break for the next session. Any top of the mind questions anybody has or has experimented with the platform? Always up here. I see a question back there. So we'll take a couple of questions. I'll just do a time check.
I wish I was there to see Gary run.
I know, Gary ran very fast.
So this is under the heading, one shoe size doesn't fit all. Maybe you could describe what some of your thoughts are about as applications or insights are being created by citizen developers, how you assess and manage those things that are going to become a part of enterprise production operations versus those things that are simply insight gathering and reporting and thinking about things that you want to do. Certainly, when something's a part of a daily operation, there are certain qualities that you need to have with respect to reliability, recoverability, integrity of the data, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you. So maybe I'll repeat the question, and then Rich, maybe you want to take this one. It's really about, if citizen developers develop apps, at what point do you say, hey, this app's worthy for now it to be governed and managed by IT, right? That's in a sense.
We haven't reached that point yet. So that'll be an interesting future. And again, part of that, I'm gonna avoid your question a little bit in saying that the unique thing, the thing that really works about low code and no code in my environment, again, I said it earlier, our organizations are very different, right? And I happen to preside over a shared service organization to a lot of different businesses. And so right now, that low code, no code development is perfect for those verticals within our organization. I haven't seen any application that really spans all of the businesses within Burns McDonnell yet. And that would be the point in our organization where that would get our attention and qualify for something to be enterprise-wide. Jason's going to help me answer it better, which he always does. Okay, but I would just say that, I think if something like that does rise to the top, we do have, since we're so adept at really focusing on things that are truly enterprise within our organization, because we have those disparate businesses, I think we'll be well equipped to address it if and when that time comes. But Jason wanted to help me with the answer.
Jason, you had a question. Yeah, you had a response there.
I just wanted to add on to what Rich said. So I think your business will tell you when it's ready for somebody will develop something and then somebody else will say, hey, Josh is using this app. What is that? Can I use it? And it's going to start organically spreading. And if you've handled things appropriately, where you've had a little bit of governance on the front end to manage the data and all of that, it's pretty easy. And what I've done at a very small level, small scale, is roll that into IT steering, a more formal governance body, to say, hey, we've got these systems over here. They're kind of isolated or single use. I'm hearing from the business that there's an opportunity to make this more enterprise. It may stay within this low-code, no-code platform, or it may have been a really good minimum viable product, MVP, or POC type of thing that you then take on as an actual enterprise initiative. Sometimes it's okay for it to stay as it is, and there's some small enhancements and you can scale it. But that's contingent on the governance you applied at the beginning.
No, very fair point. It's like your marketing app that you were talking of. It helped you with the content, so it works out. Wonderful. How are we doing on time, Dave? Are we good on time? Do we have one more question or wrap up? Okay. One more question? Okay, one more question, Gary tells me, so I'll let him run around. We'll see. We'll catch it on camera this time. He's not running this time, so.
He's not running.
He's not running.
Just to tag on to this conversation a bit, have you established standards for your citizen developers to adhere to when they're developing? Because I could envision a department or a business unit develop an app and it becomes really important to their operations, and someone leaves and no one knows what the heck they built. So how do you handle that, and what are you doing to prevent that kind of failure that could happen when you have these citizen developers out there?
Open question. Josh, you want to take that? Or
I chuckled because I'm living that right now. And so a couple ideas that I'm thinking about just broadly. So the idea of application lifecycle management, which was hinted at the other question, like those citizen developers, they don't understand that, right? When you need to deprecate something, or someone leaves the company who's the process product owner for that application, they don't understand that those rights leave with that individual. So I don't know yet. It goes along with embracing and creating this community of practice where you can gently introduce some of these concepts that they can glom onto and participate in. The other concept I'm thinking through is, all right, so a lot of your low code, a lot of your zero code will probably be Power BI right off the bat. And those reports get shiny and they get shown to the top. So they need a little bit of governance, right? So not only look and feel, but just kind of the validation of information behind them. So I was thinking about a tiering system, right? If it's within your organization, you can validate it. If it goes to another executive leader outside your organization, it needs a second level of validation. If it goes to the executive office, it's probably my team that needs to jump in there and make sure that's validated and it's a single source of truth. So I'm just playing with those concepts. I don't have any answers at this point, but it's a real situation. Interesting.
Yep, I agree. I think, and good news is that's why the dialogue and the panel today really to talk about, it's an emerging technology. It holds a lot of promise when used right. And as adoption increases, as Rich said, Josh said, and Jason, you've got to figure out the right level of governance, right level of security, and how successful it will be. And the other big takeaway for me is it can be used to both for business developers or business, I like the thing, solution makers. And also we are seeing a lot of IT teams use this effectively for newer, lighter kind of apps. So while there is a lot of marketing talk about only business makers or solution makers, you can look at it both ways. So with that, I will wrap on time. Thank you so much, Rich and Josh, for being here. And thank you, Jason, so much.
Jason.
And thanks for the flexibility. Thanks for everybody listening to us patiently. Thank you.